FBI, Quincy. Step away from the loader, hands where I can see them.
Hold up.
The cash you pulled off the Miami flight last night, $258,000.
This is Quincy Thorpe, a former Delta Airlines ramp employee at JFK. Investigators usually spend months building a case like this one, but for him, they only needed 24 hours.
Every bag that hit my belt got loaded. That's how I run my ramp.
Never crossed the threshold.
Nah, you got the wrong guy. I've been working this gate 6 years.
$258,205 in cash, 8 Loomis bags, 1 ramp worker, 1 8-second clip from camera 4. The investigation that ended his career did not take weeks. It did not take months. It took a single arithmetic discrepancy at Miami International, 90 minutes after his shift ended, and a 3-hour pull of surveillance footage that left no room for any version of events except the one that put him in cuffs the next morning. Before we go any further, I have to ask, would you have noticed a single missing bag in a shipment of 90 minutes after it landed in another state? Sound off in the comments. And if you're new here, hit subscribe. We cover the cases the airlines and the airport authorities would rather you never hear about, every single week. Quincy James Thorpe was born in 1986 at Jamaica Hospital in Queens, the second of 3 children. His mother worked overnight shifts as a home health aide for a Catholic nonprofit on Liberty Avenue. His father drove a delivery truck for a beverage distributor in Maspeth and came home most nights smelling like cardboard and diesel. The family lived on the second floor of a 3-family house off Linden Boulevard in Springfield Gardens, 3 miles from the south perimeter of Kennedy Airport. The bedroom Quincy shared with his younger brother had a window that looked east. From that window, he could see the underbellies of inbound aircraft on the 13L approach into JFK, landing gear already deployed every 90 seconds during the evening push. His father used to tell him those planes were full of people with somewhere to be. Quincy remembered being 7 years old, lying on his stomach on the carpet, wondering what was inside the cargo holds. He was a quiet kid. Teachers at PS 156 in St. Albans wrote that he was respectful, diligent, and easily overlooked. He did not stand out academically. He did not stand out athletically. He played junior varsity basketball at Benjamin N. Cardozo High School for 1 year and got cut going into his junior season. He graduated in 2004 with a 2.6 grade point average, no scholarship offers, and no real plan beyond getting a paycheck somewhere. His father told him college was not in the cards unless he found a way to pay for it himself, and there was no way to pay for it himself. He spent 2 years working at a freight warehouse in Ozone Park, unloading box trucks for $9 an hour. He spent another year doing maintenance at a self-storage facility on Atlantic Avenue. The hours were inconsistent. The work was thankless. By the time he was 21, he had moved back into his parents' apartment after a brief failed attempt at sharing a place in St. Albans with 2 cousins who could not be counted on for rent. In early 2010, a friend of his father, a man named Curtis who worked the bag belt at JetBlue, told him Delta was hiring ramp service agents at Kennedy. The starting wage was $13 an hour. There was a union. There were benefits. There was a path that did not end at a freight warehouse. Quincy applied on a Tuesday, took the lift test on a Friday, and was on the ramp in a high-vis vest and steel-toe boots by the end of the month. He liked the work more than he expected to. There was a rhythm to a ramp shift. The inbound pushback, the chalk placement, the bag belt, the catering truck, the lav cart, the fueler, the pushback tractor, the all clear, and then the next aircraft, and then the next aircraft. 45-minute turns at peak, 268 bags an hour during the morning departure bank. He learned the placards on every cargo container. He learned which captains ran tight schedules and which ones ran late. He learned which jet bridge operators would hold a door for a connecting passenger and which ones never would. He met Tasha Whitman at a Memorial Day barbecue in Cambria Heights in 2012. She was a dental assistant at a clinic in Laurelton with a soft voice and a laugh that filled a room. They married at a banquet hall in Valley Stream in 2014. Their daughter Zoe was born in 2015 at Long Island Jewish Medical Center. Their son Marcus was born in 2018 at the same hospital, in the same delivery wing, with the same nurse on duty. They bought a small 2-bedroom on 145th Avenue in Springfield Gardens with help from her parents on the down payment, 6 blocks from the apartment where Quincy had grown up. He earned a raise to $22 an hour after his 5th year at Delta. His annual reviews from 2010 through 2022 used phrases like consistent performer, shows up on time, follows manifest protocol, and team-oriented. He was never written up for safety violations. He was never investigated for theft. He was never named in any internal audit. He was the kind of employee a station manager forgets exists because nothing about him ever requires attention. He worked the 4 a.m. to 12:30 p.m. shift at Terminal 4. He drove a 2012 Honda Civic with a small dent in the rear quarter panel. He parked in the employee lot off the Van Wyck Expressway and rode the shuttle in. He clocked in at 4:05 a.m., 5 days a week for 8 years. By the spring of 2024, the math on his life had stopped working. The mortgage was $2,800 a month. Daycare for Marcus was $1,900. Zoe needed braces that the dental plan did not fully cover. The Civic needed a transmission. Tasha had cut her hours after a back injury at the clinic and was waiting on a workers' compensation determination that kept getting pushed back. Quincy was working overtime every Saturday and most Sundays. He was bringing home $72,000 a year and watching it disappear into bills before the deposit cleared the bank. He was not in trouble with anyone. He was not gambling. He was not using. He was just losing. The cargo hold of a Delta 757 is not what most passengers imagine. Below the cabin floor, behind a small access door near the aft galley, the fuselage hides 2 pressurized compartments capable of carrying 28,000 pounds of freight. On most domestic flights, the holds carry suitcases, golf bags, pet carriers, and the occasional set of human remains being transported home for burial. On certain flights, Tuesday and Friday mornings in particular, they also carry money. Loomis Armored US is a commercial cash-in-transit carrier. Banks, casinos, and large retailers contract with Loomis to move physical currency across the country. The cash moves in sealed canvas bags, each tagged with a barcode, a tamper-evident plastic seal, and a manifest number. Loomis trucks bring the bags to the cargo door at the airport. Airline ramp agents scan the bags and load them into the cargo hold alongside ordinary luggage. At the destination, Loomis trucks meet the aircraft on the receiving ramp and take the bags away under armed escort. The chain of custody is meticulous on paper. The Loomis driver scans each bag at the originating client. The Loomis driver scans each bag again at the airport handoff. The airline ramp agent scans the bag onto the aircraft. The pilot signs a cargo manifest before pushback. At the destination, the receiving ramp agent scans the bag off the aircraft. The receiving Loomis driver scans the bag at acceptance. 5 scans, 5 signatures, 5 separate logs in 3 separate computer systems. The vulnerability is not in the paperwork. The vulnerability is in the 90 seconds between the moment a Loomis driver leaves the cargo door and the moment the airline ramp agent confirms the count on his handheld scanner. During those 90 seconds, the bags sit on a belt loader on the open ramp, often with only one ramp agent assigned to that aircraft's cargo door. The other ramp agents on the team are loading the forward hold, fueling the wing tanks, marshalling the pushback tractor, prepping the lav cart. The cameras cover the ramp, but the cameras are not actively monitored in real time. The cameras are reviewed only when something goes wrong. Kennedy Airport handles approximately 62 million passengers a year. Terminal 4 alone processes more than 30,000 checked bags per day. The ramp is a city of rolling equipment, jet noise, exhaust haze, and timelines measured in single-digit minutes. A delayed pushback costs the airline thousands of dollars in connection misses, fuel burn, and crew duty time penalties. Speed is the priority. Speed is always the priority. Anything that slows the ramp slows the airline, and the people who run the airline measure the careers of the people who run the ramp by how quickly the gate clears. Ramp agents are trusted because they have to be trusted. They hold a secure identification display area badge, a SIDA badge, issued only after a full federal background check, including a fingerprint card submitted to the FBI. They have access to the ramp, the cargo holds, the catering trucks, the fueling equipment, the jet bridge controls, the avionics bays, and in some cases, the cockpit. They are vetted. They are unionized. They are paid a fraction of what their access is theoretically worth. Most of them never abuse it. Most of them work there 20 years and retire on a modest pension and walk away. The system depends on that. The system has nothing meaningful to fall back on if a ramp agent decides one morning to walk away with a bag. The plan started with a text message on a Sunday afternoon in early August. Quincy was sitting on the front steps of the house on 145th Avenue, watching Zoe ride her bike up and down the sidewalk, when his cousin Reggie pulled up in a silver 2017 Honda Accord. Reggie had grown up 2 blocks over. He had done 6 months at Rikers in 2015 for a marijuana sale that would not have been chargeable 2 years later. He had been working as a rideshare driver since picking up airport runs out of LaGuardia and Kennedy. The first conversation between them was casual. Reggie had heard from someone who had heard from someone that Loomis bags moved through JFK on a regular schedule. Quincy already knew that. He had been scanning Loomis bags for years. "How much in a bag?" Reggie asked. Quincy didn't know exactly. He knew it was a lot. He had once watched a Loomis driver hand a bag to a colleague that was so heavy, the colleague almost dropped it. The driver had laughed and said the bag was 300 grand of singles headed to a strip club in Tampa. Quincy had assumed at the time that the number was a joke. He was no longer assuming. The coded text started 2 weeks later. Reggie wrote first on his regular phone. "We need to talk for real," Quincy wrote back. "Not on this phone." They drove together to a bodega on Merrick Boulevard the next afternoon and bought 2 prepaid track phones for $48 apiece, paid in cash, no ID required. The plan they built over the next 10 days was simple, which is the only kind of plan a man with no criminal experience can actually execute. The Friday morning JFK to Miami flight regularly carried Loomis bags. The shipment was always loaded through the aft cargo door. The aft cargo door was usually staffed by a single ramp agent on the 4 a.m. shift. Quincy was that ramp agent at least 3 Fridays a month. The Loomis driver would arrive at the cargo door, scan the bags onto the belt loader, hand the manifest to the ramp lead, and leave. Quincy would scan each bag with his handheld and then load them into the hold. Between the Loomis driver's departure and Quincy's final scan, there was a window of approximately 90 seconds during which the bags sat at the base of the belt loader unattended. The service road that ran behind the ramp was used by airport vehicles only. The gate at the south end of the service road was a manned checkpoint with a single guard who waved through any vehicle displaying a JFK Aviation Department parking decal. Reggie's Accord did not have a decal. Reggie was going to drive a borrowed silver 2014 Honda Civic that did. The Civic belonged to the mother of an airport maintenance worker named Jean Pierre, who had loaned it to Reggie the night before on the understanding that Reggie was picking up a sofa from a relative in Bridgeport. Quincy would carry one bag, only one, across the service road, set it on the pavement next to the Civic's open passenger window, and walk back. Reggie would put the bag in the trunk and exit through the south gate. The math on the manifest would show 7 of 8 bags scanned. Quincy would tell the lead that the Loomis driver must have miscounted at the pickup. He had seen miscounts happen before. The lead would file a discrepancy report. The discrepancy would go to Loomis. Loomis would investigate at the originating client first, because that is where mistakes almost always happen. By the time the trail came back to JFK, the cash would have been laundered through a series of small deposits at 3 different banks, and the link to Quincy would be impossible to prove. That was the plan. None of the plan accounted for camera 4. The night before the theft, Reggie sent the final coordinating texts on his track phone. "Ramp 4, same as last time, only 1 this trip," Quincy wrote back. 8, not 7, don't miss. He meant, the manifest will show 8 bags, do not take more than 1, do not get greedy. Reggie wrote back, "Copy." The morning of the theft, Quincy clocked in at 4:06 a.m. He worked his first 3 turns of the morning normally. At 7:58 a.m., the Loomis truck arrived at the cargo door of N1667DN, the 757, scheduled to operate Flight 1421 to Miami. The Loomis driver and Quincy exchanged the same nod they exchanged every Friday. The driver stacked 8 canvas bags on the base of belt loader 17, scanned each one, handed Quincy the manifest, and walked back to the truck. The truck pulled away at 8:01 a.m. At 8:02 a.m., Quincy lifted the 8th bag off the belt loader and carried it across the service road. The Civic was idling in the spot they had agreed on the night before. Reggie's window was already down. Quincy passed the bag through the window. He did not say a word. He turned around and walked back. The whole transfer took 8 seconds. He scanned the remaining 7 bags onto the aircraft. He signed the manifest with the discrepancy noted in the comments box. He told the ramp lead, a 15-year veteran named Marcus DeWitt, that he had counted 7 bags, but the Loomis driver had marked 8. Marcus radioed it into operations. Operations told him to file the discrepancy report and continue the turn. The flight pushed back at 8:31 a.m., on time. Quincy clocked out at 12:34 p.m. He drove home. He sat in the kitchen and did not eat lunch. He did not know yet that Camera 4 had captured every step of the 8-second transfer in clean, well-lit color footage, with his badge number visible at the chest. Flight 1421 landed at Miami International at 11:47 a.m. Eastern. Taxi to gate took 9 minutes. The aft cargo door opened at 11:58. The Miami ramp lead, a 15-year veteran named Hector Aguilar, was standing at the base of the receiving belt loader with his manifest in hand and a Loomis representative 2 feet behind him. He counted 7 bags. He counted them again. 7. He looked at the manifest. The manifest said 8. He looked at the Loomis representative. The Loomis representative looked at the manifest. They counted the bags together. 7. Hector radioed his supervisor. The supervisor came down to the ramp from the operations office. They counted a 3rd time. 7. The Loomis representative was already on his radio with his dispatcher in Doral. By 12:14 p.m., 90 minutes after wheels down, Loomis NY operations on Rockaway Boulevard in Queens had been notified by Loomis Miami. The NY operations director, a former NYPD detective named Frank Marchetti, did not wait. He picked up his desk phone and called the FBI's JFK resident agency directly. He had the direct line because he had used it before on smaller cases. By 12:31 p.m., Special Agent David Kuo of the New York field office had received the call at his desk in the Federal Building at 26 Federal Plaza. By 1:02 p.m., Kuo and his partner, Special Agent Marisol Vega, were standing in the security office at Terminal 4 with the Delta Station Manager, a Port Authority police lieutenant, and the head of Terminal 4 surveillance. The first thing they asked for was the manifest. The second thing they asked for was the camera footage covering the aft cargo door of N1667DN between 7:55 and 8:05 a.m. The third thing they asked for was the name of every ramp agent assigned to that aircraft and that door. The Delta Station Manager pulled up the staffing log on his computer. He turned the monitor so the agents could see it. Aft cargo door, Flight 1421 Miami, 4 a.m. shift, operating ramp agent, Q Thorpe, badge number 041188. Agent Kuo wrote the badge number on a yellow legal pad and circled it twice in blue ink. By 2:31 p.m., the surveillance technician had pulled the footage from Camera 4. He set up a viewing station in a back office of the security building. He cued the clip to 7:59 a.m. The agents watched it once at full speed. They watched it a second time. They watched it a third time in slow motion, frame by frame. At 3:11 p.m., Agent Kuo looked at his partner across the table and said one sentence, quiet and flat. "We have him." The investigation that would end Quincy Thorpe's life as he knew it had been running for less than 3 hours. Camera 4 was mounted on a light pole at the southwest corner of the Terminal 4 ramp, 22 feet off the pavement, angled to cover the aft cargo positions of gates B-22 through B-26 and a portion of the service road that ran behind them. It had been installed in 2018 as part of a Port Authority security upgrade after an unrelated incident involving a stolen catering truck. Its footage was stored on a server in the Port Authority security building for 90 days before being overwritten in a rolling cycle. The 8-second clip was unambiguous. A black male wearing a Delta high-vis safety vest with the badge number 040488 visible on the chest panel carries a canvas Loomis bag from the base of belt loader 17 across approximately 20 feet of open pavement. He stops next to a silver 4-door sedan parked on the service road. He passes the bag through the open passenger window. He turns around and walks back to the belt loader without looking over his shoulder. The vehicle's New York license plate is legible in 3 separate frames. The plate came back through DMV records to a 2014 Honda Civic, registered to a 61-year-old woman named Loretta Pierre of Cambria Heights, Queens. Loretta was the mother of an airport maintenance worker named Jean Pierre. Jean was a friend of Reggie's from a basketball league in Rosedale. Reggie had borrowed the car the previous evening, claiming he needed to pick up a sofa from a cousin in Bridgeport. By 6 p.m. Friday, the agents had Loretta's name. By 7:15, they had Jean's. By 8:40, they had pulled Jean's call records from his carrier under an emergency disclosure request and identified Reggie as a frequent contact. By 9:20, they had pulled Reggie's call records and identified Quincy as a frequent contact. By 10 p.m., they had identified the 2 prepaid track phone numbers that had been exchanging messages for the previous 14 days, with the calling activity tightly concentrated around Friday mornings. The text messages came back from the carrier the next morning. They were verbatim, time-stamped to the second, and devastating in their plainness. Reggie, Thursday at 9:47 p.m. "We good for tomorrow, Quincy?" "Yeah, same as last time, Reggie." "South Gate, Quincy." "South Gate, Reggie." "Ramp 4, same as last time, only one this trip." Quincy, 807, don't miss. Reggie, Friday at 7:42 a.m. "In position, Quincy." Friday at 7:54 a.m. 5-man, Quincy. Friday at 8:02 a.m. Go. By Friday afternoon, the bank records had also come in. Reggie had walked into a Capital One branch on Jamaica Avenue at 10:17 a.m., barely 2 hours after the theft, and deposited $9,800 in cash. $200 under the $10,000 threshold that triggers an automatic currency transaction report. Well over the threshold for a federal structuring charge under the Bank Secrecy Act. Search warrants for Quincy's apartment, Reggie's apartment, the Civic, and Quincy's Honda were drafted Friday night. A federal magistrate signed them at 6:15 Saturday morning. The agents had everything they needed. All they were missing was the suspect himself, and they knew exactly where he would be at 4:05 a.m. Quincy clocked in at 4:05 a.m. on Saturday morning. He did not know about Miami. He did not know about Camera 4. He did not know that 2 unmarked Crown Victorias had been sitting in the employee lot off the Van Wyck for the last hour. He did not know that the Delta station manager had been pulled from bed and briefed at 3:30 in a conference room above Terminal 4. He was loading bags onto the belt of N821DN at 6:12 a.m. when Special Agent Kuo and Special Agent Vega walked across the ramp toward him. Behind them were 2 Port Authority police officers in tactical vests. Kuo was holding a manila folder against his side. Quincy saw them coming when they were still 30 feet out and stopped working. He set down the duffel bag he had been holding. He stood very still. "Quincy Thorpe?" "Yeah." "FBI, we need you to step away from the aircraft. Hands where we can see them, please." "What is this about?" "Step away from the aircraft, sir. We can talk in a minute." Quincy stepped away from the belt loader. His hands were at his sides. The agents walked him to the edge of the ramp, behind a parked cargo container, out of the line of sight of the rest of his crew. "Mr. Thorpe, we have a federal warrant for your arrest. The charge is theft from interstate shipment. Do you know what that's about?" "No, I don't know what that's about." "We have video of you taking a Loomis bag off your belt loader yesterday morning at 8:02 and handing it through the passenger window of a silver Honda Civic registered to Loretta Pierre. The vehicle was driven by your cousin, Reginald Thorpe. We have your text messages. We have his bank deposit. We have everything, Quincy. Quincy's shoulders dropped half an inch. He looked past the agent at the tail of the 757 he had been loading. He did not speak for several seconds. When he did speak, his voice was very quiet. I want a lawyer. That's your right, sir. Turn around, please. Hands behind your back. He turned around. The Port Authority officer cuffed him. He did not resist. He did not argue. He did not say another word as they walked him across the ramp toward the security building. Several of his co-workers stopped what they were doing and watched in silence. One of them, a ramp agent named Devin, who had trained Quincy back in 2010 and had stood up at his wedding, took off his own high-vis vest, balled it up in his hands, and looked at the pavement. Quincy was processed at the FBI New York field office at 26 Federal Plaza by 10 a.m. He was arraigned in federal court in Brooklyn that afternoon before a magistrate judge. He was released on a $50,000 signature bond pending trial, with surrender of his passport and travel restricted to the Eastern District of New York. By the time he got home that evening, his SIDA badge had already been deactivated in the federal database. His locker at Terminal 4 had been emptied into a cardboard box, and his Delta employment had been terminated for cause. The federal grand jury sitting in the Eastern District of New York returned an indictment on August 28th, 8 days after the arrest. The charges were 3 counts. Count 1, theft from interstate shipment under 18 U.S.C. paragraph 659, a felony carrying up to 10 years in federal prison. Count 2, conspiracy to commit theft from interstate shipment under 18 U.S.C. paragraph 371. Count 3, money laundering under 18 U.S.C. paragraph 1956A, 1, B, I, tied to the structured deposit Reggie had made at Capital One. Reggie was charged separately in a parallel indictment with conspiracy and receipt of stolen property. Quincy was assigned a court-appointed federal defender named Anthony Russo, a former Eastern District prosecutor who had been on the defense side for 11 years. Russo was direct with him in their first meeting at the federal defender's office on Cadman Plaza. The video was unimpeachable. The text messages were unimpeachable. The bank records were unimpeachable. Trial would be a formality, and the post-trial sentence would be substantially longer than what the government would offer in a plea. The only path that made any sense was a plea agreement with full cooperation, full restitution acknowledgement, and acceptance of responsibility for sentencing guideline credit. Quincy took the deal. Reggie took an identical deal a week later, after his own attorney made the same calculation. The plea hearing was on November 14th before United States District Judge Helen Marston, a 22-year veteran of the federal bench who had been appointed by President Clinton in 2002. Quincy pleaded guilty to all 3 counts in a flat, exhausted voice. Reggie pleaded guilty to conspiracy and receipt of stolen property. Sentencing was scheduled for February. The sentencing hearing lasted 94 minutes. The government called a single witness, the Loomis NY Operations Director, Frank Marchetti, who described in measured detail the impact of the theft on the company's relationships with its banking clients, 3 of whom had threatened to pull their contracts in the days following the loss. The defense called Tasha Thorpe, who spoke in a shaking voice about her husband's character before the financial pressures of the previous 2 years had begun to compound, and asked the court for leniency on behalf of their 2 children, who were sitting in the 3rd row of the gallery in matching blue sweaters. Judge Marston was measured in her remarks, and she spoke directly to the defendant rather than to the courtroom. Mr. Thorpe, this court has reviewed every document submitted by both sides. I have read your wife's letter. I have read the letters from your mother, your pastor at Greater Allen AME, your former high school basketball coach, and your former supervisor at Delta. I do not doubt that the man who walked onto the JFK ramp 8 years ago was not the man who walked off it last August. I do not doubt that there were real and genuine financial pressures in your life that you did not know how to address. But the position you held was a position of public trust. Every passenger who boards a commercial aircraft in this country trusts that the people loading the cargo hold are not stealing from it. Every bank that ships currency through the airline cargo system trusts that the chain of custody will hold from origin to destination. You broke that trust deliberately. You broke it with planning. You broke it over the course of 2 weeks of coordination with a co-defendant. That is not a crime of impulse, Mr. Thorpe. That is a crime of decision. The sentence I impose has to reflect the difference. She sentenced Quincy to 37 months in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Restitution in the amount of $258,205, joint and several with his cousin. Reggie received 24 months and the same supervised release term. Both were ordered to surrender within 30 days. Quincy was designated to the Federal Correctional Institution at Otisville, a low-security facility in Orange County, New York, about 90 minutes north of Springfield Gardens by car. Otisville is a common designation for Eastern District defendants because it is close enough to the city to allow regular family visits. He self-surrendered on March 11th, walking through the front gate with a paperback novel and a list of approved phone contacts in his hand. He was inmate number 96412-053. He worked in the kitchen for 12 cents an hour. He took a class on small business accounting through the prison education program. He read to his daughter Zoe over the phone every Sunday evening for 15 minutes, the maximum his weekly call allotment allowed. He did not talk much to the other inmates. He did not get into any trouble. He counted days. His SIDA badge was permanently revoked. The federal database that controls airport access flagged his name in a way that cannot be cleared. He will never work in commercial aviation again. He will never work in transportation security again. He will never work in any role that requires a federal background check. The 8 years he spent on the JFK ramp, learning the rhythm of the morning departure bank, the placards on every cargo container, the names of every captain on the 4 a.m. flights. All of that institutional knowledge is now unusable for the rest of his working life. The cash was almost entirely recovered. 241,000 of the 258 had been sitting in a black duffel bag in the back of Reggie's bedroom closet, still in its original Loomis bands and tamper-evident seals, when the agents executed the search warrant on Saturday morning. The remaining 17,000 was never accounted for. Reggie said in his proffer that he did not remember spending it. The agents did not press the point. Loomis revised its protocols at JFK in October. 2 ramp agents are now required at every cargo door during a cash transfer. A Loomis representative remains physically on the ramp until the airline's manifest scan is fully complete and confirmed. Camera 4 was upgraded to 4K resolution and tied into a live monitoring feed at the Port Authority security desk. The 90-second window that Quincy Thorpe exploited no longer exists for anyone who comes after him. Tasha kept the house on 145th Avenue. She went back to full-time work at the dental clinic in Laurelton. Her parents helped with the kids. Zoe and Marcus were told their father was working far away for a while. Marcus, who was 6, asked his mother one Sunday afternoon if he could see the airport his dad worked at. Tasha drove him along the Belt Parkway and pulled over near the perimeter fence south of the runway. He pressed his face to the window and watched a Delta 757 lift off into the haze over Jamaica Bay. He did not know it was the same airline, the same kind of aircraft, and very nearly the same flight number his father had loaded on the morning everything ended. This case was clean. The math caught him in 90 minutes flat. But the case on the right-hand side of your screen right now? The math never caught up at all until it was way, way too late. Click it now.